Morning, sir.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much. Right about now, I would be inviting Dr. Mosoka P Fallah, who will be speaking to us from Africa CDC. He's the AG Director of Science and Innovation and Program. And let's welcome him as he addresses us this morning. Keynote address. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I say I have few slides. A few days ago, my PhD advisor was retiring in the US, and I did a presentation. I probably should start that with my journey, so that I have a few slides, then I will go into other details. Yes, let me, if you don't mind. So then I will share you some of the work I've done. If you allow me, I will share I just have a few slides because I really want to speak from my heart and to these students. Okay, let me see if I can share my slide. I have a few slides, not many. Well, I presented this slide to when my PhD advisor was retiring, and I will tell you because I'm sure many of you, your story will resonate with my story. So, and the topic was giving me a lifetime opportunity. That's I was saying that my PhD advisor gave me an opportunity, and that opportunity I turned it around into outbreaks. And in a moment, I will convince you why I said that. So, the photo I'm sharing with you is the University of Liberia Fender campus. On the right, you have students with Benson Bueno. So this was the university that I went to in 1990. I graduated from high school, high school 89, and I wanted to become a surgeon, a cardio surgeon. And so the university was developed, the science colleges were well. And then 3 months after I went to the university, the 1990 Civil War started. Everything was destroyed. Everything was destroyed. So imagine coming from using Benson Bueno for experiment to using Copot. 1992, when we went back to the university was destroyed, it was broken. All of the professors had escaped the country. I was studying chemistry for my first degree, and we never had a single instructor with a PhD. The chairman of the chemistry department had a master's, and the rest of the instructors were bachelor's degree holders. So imagine venturing to receive a bachelor degree from another bachelor degree holder. This was across the entire university. From the physics, the chemistry, mathematics, there were no instructor. Going back to school in a broken Bueni structure. This is where I got my first degree. And because of the war, it took me 10 years for my first degree. We go to school for 1 semester. When the rebels advanced to the city, we pick our bags with our parents and escape for our lives. After they have fought for months and there is a ceasefire, we come back and put the pieces together to start university education. Imagine trying to get a chemistry degree in the midst of a war where you're not sure of your life, you're not sure of your next meal. I remember we were doing physical chemistry, and this is how we used to study. The city was in complete darkness. There was no electricity. So we walked to one of our friend's house. He had a little blackboard, and we laid the blackboard against the fence of the US embassy because they had a generator and electricity. And we would study all night and go to school the next morning. So that was how I got my first degree. So imagine after my first degree, started medical school, and after 2 years, the war advanced with new intensity. The rebel advanced to the city. Imagine having a haphazard education and then going to the University of Kentucky in the US to do a PhD in immunology. No foundation, but yet I was recruited among some of the best students in the world to do my PhD. When I went to the US, I did a master's degree in evaluation and measurement, not even in the sciences so that my deficiency could be covered. Eventually, the university felt very strongly that my chance of succeeding or getting a first degree was impossible because I didn't have a solid education. And the way I got to the university to do my PhD, because I was applying when I went to the US, when I was doing my master's. I think it was the hand of God. Sorry, I'm a religious person. I come from a Christian background, and I think God has a way of preparing people for tomorrow. I can't explain everything to you, but I think some kind of way God was preparing me to come back first to my country and then to Africa. Because in my final year of my PhD, when I was getting ready for my defense, the head of the program said to me, Mosoka, did you know how you got recruited? I said, no. She said, when the initial evaluation committee review your folder, they wrote on top of your folder, very high risks. Your chances of succeeding with PhD is very slim in an American university, a first-tier university. So she said she picked up my folder. She could not sleep. She read through my folder. And then I gave her my statement I wrote was the long journey from a war-torn Liberia to Ghana in the US. In that story, I wrote how the center for the GRE was destroyed. There was no center in Liberia. I had to take a plane part of the way to Cote d'Ivoire, and I got on a truck and got to Ghana in the middle of the night. I did not know anyone, but I came to prepare for the GRE, and I passed the GRE and made my way to the US. And in my statement, I said, the same spirit of resilience that made me to go through trucks, that spirit will help me obtain my PhD. She said when she read it, she said, I will give you a chance. So I arrived in the lab to do biomedical science. The first time I went to a student seminar and they were discussing transcription and translation, discussing promoter and transcription factors. They were like Greek. I didn't understand at all. Then I went to start working in the lab. My first time in the most advanced lab, I had to do Western blot. I felt so terribly that I went to the wall and I started to cry. I knew I was never going to make it. And I remember a Chinese girl coming and hugging me and said, Mosoka, research me, you redo it. But then I grew so proficient, and finally I graduated from the University of Kentucky and got my PhD in immunology and microbiology. But my heart, so my PhD was really to develop vaccines for streptococcus pneumonia. Because all of my time in the US, I always was thinking, what am I going to do to benefit Africa? It was everyone who knew me. In fact, during my master's, I looked at malaria, looking at artemisinin combination therapy comparing to chloroquine. Every research I did, I traced the origin of the resistance to chloroquine all the way from East Africa to Senegal. In West Africa, the first era of resistance was in Senegal, then it spread to the rest of Africa. And then when I went to do my PhD, all of the students were doing PhD in B-cell immunology, cancer, leukemia. I said, I'm going to do streptococcus pneumonia. I'm going to work on developing vaccines for streptococcus pneumonia because 90% of the children in Africa, of the cases of pneumonia are in Africa. So I left. And then I started thinking what to do with my life. Should I go to do a postdoc? Should I go into global health? So I selected global health. And so I got accepted at Harvard. It's a different story how I got accepted. But I got accepted at Harvard and entered Harvard 2010. I left Kentucky and went to Harvard School of Public Health. I went to go to global health, maternal child, and then I had my best friend, Ibrahim Abuye. He's a Nigerian. He's now a professor at Harvard. And then he saw my grades. He saw my course. He said, Mosoka, you are an immunologist. You need to go and do infectious disease epidemiology. You have all the requisite skill set. He took me, Ibrahim taking me and carrying me to the professor and said, this guy should do infectious disease epidemiology. So I got accepted into the infectious disease program. And then I was taking this course with a professor who was teaching us malaria. It was deep immunology, but then I knew immunology. When I went to Harvard, it was tough. I didn't have enough money. Then she said, come and work in my lab as a research assistant. So I got to work in her lab, working on genome-wide association on malaria. So I left Harvard and then moved to Liberia to work a project on a USAID project. Then, talking about the hand of God, when I arrived in Liberia after about a year, the 2014 Ebola outbreak struck Liberia. And I was then a visiting professor for Indiana University. And then the minister called me and said, Mosoka, we have Ebola in the northwestern part of the country. We don't have much understanding. And now just imagine the hand of God, right? I am going to Harvard to go do maternal child health, and my friend Ibrahim forced me to go do infectious disease epi. And because of the sound background we had in our date in infectious disease epi, understanding outbreak, how to control outbreak, then Ebola came. Should this be by mistake or in a way, God was using Ibrahim to prepare me for the West Africa outbreak? Because then I understood all the concept, the disease dynamics, I understood and I started to help the country. When I started helping the country to set up the system and processes for the outbreak, Indiana called me and said, Mosoka, I was there with an American, you have a choice. The choice you have is that we cannot afford insurance if you get infected. You have to come back to the US. We cannot afford. So they told my American friend, he decided to leave. And I told him I cannot leave my country. I'm not taking him to the airport. And my friend John said to me, Mosoka, I'm going to say two things to you. You are going to get either two things will happen to you. You will get Ebola and you will die, or if you survive Ebola, your life will not be the same. And so I got involved in the Ebola outbreak, set up the system, the processes, because of my background in a strong background in infectious epi, set up the system, recruited 5,000 persons to work for me, raised millions of dollars. So the outbreak ended. And then one day I'm sleeping. I woke up in the morning, I got a call, and I was told, Mosoka, congratulations, you have become Time Magazine President of the Year. I was never dreaming, I was never thinking. I said, why? He said, because of the work you've done for humanity. This will go ahead continuously. And this is the award I got in 2015 from Harvard. My old school Harvard then called me back and said, Mosoka, the alumni of Harvard voted. They all voted, and you have become, you've demonstrated that you have leadership in public health. We'll fly you to Boston. We'll pay for your hotel. Come and receive your award. So I flew in. But the thing I want you to watch, because you see me now, if you watch, I'm telling you what I did in public health. But you may ask me, this is a scientific meeting. What did you do in science? At the time, I became the principal investigator for the largest Ebola survival outbreak in the world. There is no time so I can show you the findings. We've been able to publish many papers in New England Journal of Medicine and in Lancet. So this is what happened. I'm sitting helping the country with the outbreak, and the people came from the US NIH. they came to Liberia to see if they could develop a vaccine for Ebola. And I'm sitting and I'm asking some few questions. Then the head of the delegation, Dr. Cleveland, said, "Who is this guy?" And he said, he had no one to respond. And he called me. He said, "Oh," I said, "No, I'm an immunologist by training." He said, "What?" "Yeah." I said, "The immunology and microbiology by training. I'm a co-scientist." He said, "We are about to start a study for a vaccine. Can you take us to the community so we can do some perception study and see what other people want to take vaccines?" So we went and they decided that we could test it. So today, in a word, there is a vaccine they call Evovac, the Zaire vaccine. We were the ones that did the initial phase 2 clinical trial. So we sat down, we developed the protocol, we launched the vaccine trial in Liberia, and eventually we generated evidences. I flew to Geneva, I defended the vaccines. It was accepted, it was used in the DRC and in Guinea. Today it's called Evovac, it is a licensed vaccines. I hope you understanding the tapestry, how God works your life. This is a guy who went to school for 10 years in a broken down school with half education, you know, and goes to the US and think about his continent and his country. And now he's a scientist leading a large clinical trial, the largest Ebola survival studies in the world. 1,500 Ebola survivors. We followed them for 5 years. Every 6 months, we draw their blood, we examine them. We follow women to the time the women got pregnant. We followed the pregnant women until they gave birth. At the time they gave birth, we took the cord blood. We tracked the babies until the babies became 5 years. We published a paper in Lancet. I don't have the time, but I can share with the professor to share with you guys. So how do you explain that? I had an easy way out. I could have gone back to the US when they gave me the option, but I chose the risk to stay and serve our people in Africa. I have not really gone back to the US to live. I've worked on many projects in Africa. So I explained to you, I got involved. Right now, as I speak to you with the current, so I told you about the clinical, the Zaire is called VSV Zibo. We're involved in the vaccine development. I work for the Ebola survival trial. Now, with the current outbreak going on in the DRC, so eventually after the Ebola end, I then say, okay, finally I need to go back now to the US. I think I've done my part. I need to go to the US and rest. And I'm packing my bag to go, and I got a call that, oh, the president of Liberia says he has one final assignment for you, you and your friend. Can you guys help to build the National Public Health Institute, or what you call Nigeria CDC? So we traveled to Norway, Malaysia. In 18 months, we literally built the Public Health Institute. I became chief scientist. Eventually, I moved to Africa CDC to lead the COVID-19 response. I was responsible for COVID-19 to get the vaccines across the continent. I was able to work with my team for 37 million doses of vaccines. In the process, I got COVID twice. And I was still having COVID seven. If you're seeing, I was saying maybe later on, I will show you the photo of me traveling around Africa with masks on the plane with masks. Imagine trying to eat with masks on. Then we did it. And eventually, one day the DJ asked me, he said, "Mosoka, can you serve as director of science?" So for the past 2 years, I've been serving to drive science on the continent, to take all of those experiences and build a strong scientific component on this continent, looking at areas like therapeutic repurposing, working with African scientists to build. So right now I'm working with ERV. We're trying to launch a cross protection study for the vaccine that I work on in the Ebola Sudan, so that we can be able to protect the people. So you see, life comes in a full circle. First, you have to be courageous. Like your topic say, I could have easily gone back to the US and protect myself. You know, I could have gone back, but I chose not to go. I took the risk. I remember one evening I was sitting down and my uncles called my mom and they said, "Are you not letting your son to go back to the US?" She said, the chief scientist for Ebola in Sierra Leone, Professor Khan, has died. And I'm very convinced people are saying your son is going to die. So my mother called me. She said, "My son, we were poor people, we tried to help you. what wrong have we done? Why can't you go back to the US? I said, Mama, I can't go back. I'm here to help our people. I'm not going to go to the US. I said, no, I'm not going. I can't leave my people in this situation. What if I had not taken the courage to take the risks? And you know, the thing that was unique was that I was never willing to sit in the office. I can send you photos. Many people follow me and took photos. Journalists were following me. I was always in the field of the people, listening to them, understanding their pains, and then finding solution. You know, I never sat down in the office. I never said, oh, I came from Harvard. I should be in the office giving people, telling people what to do. I was on the front line. And that became a real university because I learned outbreak very, very well. The reason why you don't see me presenting slide is that uh, 30 minutes ago, I was speaking to the European Parliament on One Health. I was speaking to them on zoonosis and antimicrobial resistance. What am I saying? Why is it this guy who went through war cannot speak to the European Parliament on funding? It's because I was on the ground, on the front line, listening to people, serving people, and gaining expertise. So for you young people, as you get involved, you have to think on a bigger picture. Why are you doing what you are doing? Is it for your own self or to serve our continent, to serve our people? Sometimes you will not receive recognition. You may not receive the amount because when I refused to go back to the US, the university pulled their funding, stopped supporting me. So for the first couple of months, I was supporting myself from my pocket using my car. When ACF gave me the first job, they were paying me $1,200 per month. And when the guy asked me, like, do you know how much I used to make for USAID per day? He said, Mosoka, you are just an idealist. Right now, you are not making money. I'm promising you 1,200 that all I can give you. But I will go beyond that and make a lot of money. So money should not be your priority from the beginning. Serve your people, have a deep care for them. And I've seen it happen in my life. The honor will come, the money will come, the promotion will come. But at the core of your being, service to our people, using science as a force of good. So even as you approach the opportunity that you are given on the Drosophila, think on what our people are facing today. How can you serve them? So this is the story of the Homo guy who came from 10 years of civil war using COPAT and today leading global science. Thank you very much. Thanks to Professor Amos for the opportunity. Maybe students may have some questions to ask me, but thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. So we'll take comments and questions from the house or from the online participant. Do we have comments, questions? Anybody?
Thank you very much, Professor Mosoka. Your story is very encouraging. And with the limited resources we have in this part of the world, going into modern science of using Drosophila, seeing how resilient you are throughout your education procedure, what is your basic advice for us? If you know our background, I'm sure you understand us being an Africa, how we have difficulties with facilities. What is your advice for us?
Thank you. Can I start? Maybe I could take a couple of questions. In fact, your question is the more reason why we are working with Professor Amos to start Drosophila across the continent. It is low maintenance. It is cheaper for us for now than if we imagine setting up a mouse colony or setting up a non-human primate. You know, when I was in the US, most of my research was done on aging BAPC mouse and C57 blacks, BL75, but 7. And let me tell you, one time my professor asked me, because I used to send for sometimes 200 mouse, you know, I would euthanize them to extract the spleen, because most of my work was on the spleen and the bone marrow. So one day he asked me, Mosoka, have you ever looked at the price of one of the mouse in bread? I said, no. One of those masks were costing $275 US. If you imagine that I killed, maybe I euthanized more than 600 masks for my PhD, inject them, that was a lot of money that Africa cannot afford now to run an animal colony. So one of the reasons why when Professor Amos came to us, we say we need to expand this across because it's low maintenance, is low yield. So the first thing we think we should do Drosophila because it's low maintenance, low use, and we can ask key questions that are relevant. You know, cancer, neuro, like the opportunity, and then push yourself, push the boundary. So we want to start. That's why we are saying that we want to be able to work with Amos to set up this Drosophila colony at multiple sites. So if you have a new drug and you test it in Drosophila because it's low cost, once it is promising, then we can move it to animals. What we are doing is that we're trying to create 2 or 3 animal facilities on the continent so that once you do your Drosophila, it's cheaper and we see some promises, then we can move it to the animals that are more costly to keep. So I think in the right way, in response to your question, I think the best way we are proceeding is with the Drosophila because they are cheaper, low yield, the birth time is short, we need minimal amount. What we need to work towards is as we expand this, we start to think on how we can write some common grants, how we can do minimal investments. Also, we need to optimize and start duplicating. Let's say there is a good Drosophila lab in University of Ghana. Maybe we work with universities so it become a common lab for all the students to come and work instead of every department having their own Drosophila lab. That can be so costly. So we say maybe we select a country, we select an institution, we invest the minimum amount of money. And you know the way the world goes, when you have results, then the funding comes. Once we see that you have a promising molecule, we work with you to move it down to the animal facility. Because if Africa, we are able to move towards commercialization of our molecules, it will work. And so one of our job is linking all the scientists together. We'll be very happy so that you leave all of your addresses and contacts because we want to start working on the next generation. You guys are going to be the future for us. But again, the straight answer is that the real purpose is the Drosophila in low cost, low maintenance compared to an animal model, an animal colony that is so expensive to maintain.
Thank you.
Yeah. Please feel free to ask any question on your career. This is an opportunity that you have. Please don't hesitate to ask a question. I'm patient enough to give you the opportunity because you are the future for us.
Dr. Mosoka, thank you for your presentation. And you said you could not run the Western blot, and you went and you were crying, and a Chinese came and spoke with you. This is the same problem we are having in Africa. For example, when I went for my postdoc in ICGB in China, I was explaining to my host, Professor Yang, about the theory of Western blot. Then he asked me, okay, go to the lab and start your work. But I couldn't because I know the theory, I've read about the theory, but the practical was not there because we lack the facility in our universities. Most of the universities we have in Nigeria, we teach our students the theory, but let them go to the lab and run the practical, they could not. So he now called one very young girl, intern, to take me to the lab and teach me. So that the student took me to the lab and taught me how to run the Western blot for the first time, and continuously I was able to run the Western blot. So sir, what are you doing as one of the African leading scientists to bring these basic techniques to our undergraduates so that we can start teaching them and not to teach them the theory without the practical? Thank you.
No, thank you. This is probably the most important question you raise. We go in stages. I mean, I'm guilty. We need to do something about it, and we need to do about it fast. And I thank you so much. I hope we can stay in touch. What we started doing is to work with what exists. So we selected countries, but you are right. We're working with South Africa and other countries with what exists. But what you brought is, I hope we keep in touch. It's going to be critical. We need to find a way, a program. We can be all universities. I'm thinking how to do it. Do we take one, maybe we take a country and say, okay, we create a centralized lab, or we take a good university and we invest in that universities, and other university students can come and learn from it, because there are so many universities, over 500 universities. Or we need to work with government and create more advocacy for government. But you brought a key question that I don't have the direct answer, and we need to find the answer. and find the answer quick. What we are doing is that we are working from the other end, from the established. We're now working from you guys who are the future. We have to think through it. I hope you can join me with think and we brainstorm. How do we pilot this? How do we make an investment case for governments, for private sector? But your story resonates so well with me. Yes, and until you can do it by hand, you don't know it. You never ever know. You don't ever dream that you know a procedure until you do it. But you do it, and you have to do it until you have the what we call the muscle memory. You know, yes, you have to do it and master it. So the greater challenge any African student will face in the Western education is the techniques. And fundamentally, no, as a scientist, you have to do for yourself. So we are guilty. We need to find a solution. I hope we can keep in touch, work with a few other persons, select a few countries, and make a common. I think it has to be a little bit of government. We need to work on a solution, what we can find. Do we do all universities? What I see most of the time is that people like to work as individuals. But in the US, they have a core facility. They have a core facility. So take one university, Ibadan. Let's just say we have a core Western blot facility, or we have a core facility for running PCRs. But the point is that it is a deficiency, and we must add now. We must add, otherwise there will be many of us, just like you and me, that will have this problem. I hope that you, me, Amos Online, and few persons can come together and say, let's think through a solution. But it is the experience of many African students. Maybe we start with a few countries, we map out the capacity of those countries for those simple procedure, and then we go forward. So by all means, I don't have an answer, but we can find the answer. And since you are passionate and have the experience, I really pray that you keep in touch with me. I'll put on my email up and my WhatsApp so that we find solution. That's what I can say. We are wrong. We've not done a greater job. And we think many of our undergraduates are not getting ready for the modern science. So thank you. I will have to admit this. Yeah. We have to find a solution. But this is a good question. Let's keep in touch and let's try to see what we can do as a pilot.
Okay, thank you. My question is about innovation and how that relates to your office, sir. Am I still audible?
Yes, innovation, yeah.
Great. Yeah. Super. I want to know what relationship or what platform does your office offer in relation to the ARIPO, the African Regional Intellectual Property Organization, for instance? So I was using my story as an example. During my PhD, because I'm always somebody keen into developing low resource reagents that conform with our community, I was able to develop my own DNA ladder. I was able to develop my own loading die, which was eventually submitted for patenting. However, a couple of years down the line, nothing has been done. We've paid for everything, but well. So now if I'm not going to patent, I am interested in technology transfer of some of the skills that I've developed and be able to spread that to other universities and be able to develop some of these reagents in-house. So I would like to ask Dr. Fallah, do you have platforms that support technology transfer in this context? Thank you very much.
This is an excellent question. And I worry every day. I will come back to it. I unpack your question on 3 categories: intellectual property, patent, and the fact that the solution to the problem we are facing in Africa exists in Africa, but we don't have access to them. For example, I'm just hearing for the first time that you have developed low resource reagents and dyes, and for DNA ladder. The question, okay, I have a project with my Nigerian friend. We are just about to start. His name is Ahmed Tijani. Actually, we are meeting at 3 o'clock. We're going to start. I told him, I said, Ahmed, you know something? He said, no. I said, the solution to the problems Africa face is found in the universities. It is found in the dissertations and the theses. I said, but what we've done for Africa is that the dissertations and theses are sitting down and gathering dust. But no student who does his PhD does not have reason for doing it. So we are about to launch a new project. We are going to work with university to be able to quickly scan dissertations and theses and select those that have potential to transform the continent. And then we are building what we're calling the incubators and accelerators. I will launch it very soon. We will soon launch it. And then we can move people like you, because it's different in the US. When I went to school, one of my university had what we call the Gulf Stream. It was a 5,000-acre land. They were meant to be places for industry. By the time a PhD student also has an idea, they go into an incubator and they get some access to funding. They fund them to, like you now, you should go into industry, right, and share this for the continent. So the first thing is that we need to find, the question is, how do we find people like you that are finding solutions to Africa? Let's work on that together. The second thing you spoke about, in November, we're having the conference on public health in Africa. In November, the first week in November, we are going to have an entire section on intellectual property and patent. I'm actually working to start an office on patent here in R&D, to have a legal person trained on patent to be able to help. Because the value for R&D is downstream, is in the patent. The second thing where we make mistake is that, so we have an office, we'll start an office, we're starting patent work, but we're going to do a formal, I hope you can come to the conference in November in Ethiopia. That's the second point. Now, most of us were trained to publish or perish. But I can tell you for a fact, once you publish, it becomes a challenge to file a patent. I'm working with a young PhD student who have developed a plant-based cholera vaccine, plant-based cholera vaccines using potatoes. But she has published part of the work. So that's the challenge we are facing now. How do we help her to file a patent when she has published? The training they have given us for us to publish, instead of getting the intellectual property benefit. So that's the second point I want to raise. The third point is that we have a department on local manufacturing, and the focus, one of the components is tech transfer. So definitely we can work with you on the issue of this tech transfer. We want to see where you are in this development. Where can we move it? Which stage are you now? We might want to work with you on the techno economy, because that's another key concept. What is economic viability if we move you forward to manufacturing? We have a whole division of manufacturing, and by all means, we have a meeting. And one of the manufacturing in Africa CDC, we have market shipping and tech transfer. There's a whole division on tech transfer, and definitely we should have a separate meeting with you to move this. So if I summarize for you, intellectual property, we're trying to set it up. There is a division on tech transfer within Africa CDC, local manufacturing. And then the third question which I refers to you is, that's because there's so much brain in that room. How do we find people like you from your experience? What can we do to find the young innovators like you? What we're also doing is that we are building an ecosystem, a huge ecosystem, where if your idea needs to be validated and you don't have the means to do it in Nigeria, we can get it to South Africa. So we build a whole ecosystem based on the unique abilities on different countries. That's an opportunity we are developing for African researchers on what we're calling the R&D ecosystem. We are building that so that you don't get stuck because you have to do it by the technology. You don't have to buy the technology. If you have the idea and you develop it, we can move it. Again, then I asked my first colleague, let's work on the issue of early development innovation. So we'll keep in touch. Maybe you come to the meeting in November in CPHI, if we can sponsor you to come. But we should go and discuss how we can move your idea further so it doesn't stay in the lab. And you're not the only person. There are many others like you that have done development, but it does not move when they do the innovation to move. But we should try to see if we can showcase it. No promises, but I think it shouldn't die. We need to connect you with the right people. And we have the right network to be able to connect you. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir.
Go ahead.
Please go ahead. Go ahead, sir.
No, I was saying that it's an opportunity. I wish I could hear from everyone, because opening my eyes, I'm putting up my email and my WhatsApp. Like I said, I'm not promising but for all solution, but we can co-create solutions together. We have one on what do we do with what do we do with building undergraduate capacity to do research? We now have a young innovator, an innovator. How do we move that innovation forward? You know, it's the bigger picture. This thing opening our eyes to the bigger picture. Where are the innovations sitting? Why are we keeping the universities and their innovations and we're not moving them further? We've developed a project with the European Union, we call it the Macy Matter. We are saying that our bigger issue in Africa is that opportunity for incubation and acceleration is not much. I think only South Africa is one of the countries that has money and funding for that. Please go ahead and I just put up my email and put it on my WhatsApp. If you have this idea, let's really meet and talk. Amos is there, we can move forward. Over to you.
Thank you so much, sir. In addition to the question, in addition to response to his comments the other time about access to equipment, I think it's one of the gaps that we are trying to close at DRTC. I mean, here we have Western Blot, we have some of these equipment and facilities that he mentioned, and so it would be nice to also leverage on some of these resources and in doing the work that you do. And that's even basically one of the reasons why trainings like this are organized, to bridge that gap, because we've recognized there's a huge gap, and one step at a time we can contribute to bridging those gaps. Just before the time runs out, comments from faculty.
I just want to say that is an incredible story. Your story is impressive. You're very impressive. I guess if I were to ask any question coming from the West, from the US and from the UK, I guess my question would be, what can we do to help? What is the single greatest need? Obviously, money is an easy answer, and I can't necessarily bring lots of that. But what else can we do other than come to these workshops and share what we know?
I think this is a very good question. I just concluded a presentation to the European Union. I will give you an example. We have a monthly webinar, scientific webinar, that we do with the European Union. So we take an African scientist and an EU scientist, and what we've done is every month, we first of all have so it's a joint collaboration. The African scientists present for 15 minutes, the European scientists then will take questions. So that, first of all, we're building that. When I took over, I called my mentor from Harvard, Deanne Wolf, and Deanne Wolf said some things to me that were the critical barriers for R&D in Africa. She said the first thing is that the African scientists are working in silos. They don't know what they are doing. So the first major gap we need to think, how do we build a network of scientists? Just listening to those young people and see what they are doing. A professor will be in one university in Nigeria, doesn't even know that another colleague has a solution. So one, we are working towards building consortium. How do we build a stronger consortium? That is the easiest to do. It is low cost, helping us to work together to bring scientists together and build consortium like you have started. I think first and foremost is the who. How do we help the scientists to know the who? Who is doing what on the continent? I think we can easily work on that. We need to brainstorm how we can let them know each other. You don't have to solve all the problem. Some of my classes, my courses in the US, a professor will come from maybe Texas and come to Boston and give us a lecture based on his expertise. How do we build that who? The second thing is the what. What infrastructure already exists? If I hadn't met Amos in Liberia, I wouldn't have known that he has an elaborate system on Drosophila. And I'm a big proponent of Drosophila because, as you know, I went to University of Kentucky, and Thomas Horn Morgan came from University of Kentucky. There's an entire building. The biology building is named after him. Thomas Horn Morgan building. It's called the Morgan building. So Drosophila is a big thing. And as Amos explained to how low cost it is compared to animal model, compared to non-human primates, is there a way we can get on a crusade to use what you guys have started to expand into labs? That's the second thing we could do, and make this kind of training to be rotational. For example, the easiest you can do, in November, we're having the conference on popular health in Africa. We can have a section on Drosophila. What is it taking? So those are now hard cost things. So I spoke first on the who, helping us to continue to build the consortium, to expanding on the Drosophila work. Yes. And yes, that's the second I would think about. And then we are building this network of different scientists with different competence on the continent. Being part of those engagement, opening a webinar, and going for joint proposal. Like we do that with EDCTP. We go for grants. There is no surety, but at least giving African scientists the technical capacity to do grant asset. So I spoke about the WHO helping us to link so we can start the silos, working through infrastructure such as the Drosophila, going for joint grants, those kind of things that work. And then how do we help the African scientists to have an upstream mindset from the work they are doing to application, translational research? Most of our education in Africa is not translational. So then our politicians don't see reason why they should fund research, science diplomacy, and translational research. The NIH has been strong for years because the Americans have seen the value of the NIH in funding research. So translational research, science diplomacy, teaching our African scientists how to communicate with the politicians and different stakeholders. Why is it that Dangote will invest billions of dollars into cement, but don't think on investing in some science for a common disease that affect Africa? Because we have not given him the value or the return on investment for investment in science. So if I summarize, helping us to break the silos, helping us to magnify this Drosophila, a crusade on the continent to make it, and John Grant, and finally, helping us to work on translational research and science diplomacy. I think these are low cost. They don't require lots of funding, but they are so critical. They are very, very critical for us. So I just want to thank you for making the efforts to come. How do we reproduce the types of AMOS across strategic countries? If we imagine we can produce 10 of AMOS in, say, in Ghana, in the DRC, in Tanzania, we already have done almost 20-30% of the job. Thank you very much. I think for me, this is critical. These are my suggestions. They are low cost, don't require funding, but they can be done. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Follow up on encouragement. So first of all, sir, thank you for those comments, and I completely echo them.
Call me Mosoka. No, sir. Just call me Mosoka.
Yeah. And you won't find a better advocate for all of this than Amos, who we've been working together for almost a decade now. But I just wanted to say on all of your points, anything that I and we can do. I've started 4 companies. We've moved 1 drug through to approval. I'm well connected in that world in the West. If you need people to help with each of these things, in addition to Amos, I'm happy to provide whatever you need and connect you with who you need and help out as I can.
This is the most important thing. The last statement is the most important, sir. We'll get to you quickly. Trying to make science to get to value like companies and translation. We really need that. We really need that. I'm working with a group of scientists who have developed some molecules from natural therapeutics for the Ebola. We're just trying to now put it through scientific rigor to use it for responses. You are going from end to end. And it is this kind of example we need. We will really need you. After here, I will really want Amos and us to talk exactly that end to end. It is the way for Africa. As you may know, we are importing 99% of our vaccines, 95% of our therapeutics, 90% of our drugs we are importing. And we think that, and there is a good way for the African Union. An example such as yours, where you move from R&D to company, would be a good time. I pray, Amos, that we can have a separate meeting with that team. This is what we're trying to get at. All our job, my first and foremost job in my position is how do we move from end to end. I don't have the time to show you. Maybe in a separate meeting, I will show you. We've done a mapping on the upstream R&D from head to lead all the way to phase 1 trial. The whole system across the continent is very poor. And then preclinical. So we really need those critical upstream, and we can learn a lot from you. I will tell Amos we can find a separate time. I'm open anytime at your free time for us to go into a deeper discussion so we can have some very practical things to do on the continent. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fallah. You remember in Liberia, I mentioned Professor Ross Kagan is the one that just made the comment now, and that they have a facility in Glasgow for the synthesis of new drugs. And with respect to our team on the drug repurposing to be able to tackle new diseases, I'm sure he's also going to come handy with respect to that. And they also have a throughput system to screen thousands of drugs, at the same time. So I'm happy that you are interacting and connecting. I will be able to bring that to our
I know I'm talking
repurposing.
like Amos. I just came from a meeting in Cairo, and the example was the example of Ireland. The best example for Africa, honest to God. If it means we can fly to Glasgow, I will find my way. But the best example for Africa, the person was telling us, was Ireland example, where they use science and good education to be one of the largest investment R&D. For us in Africa, I believe very strongly, if we link with Ireland, it will help us to move faster because they came from a challenging economy and they transformed themselves. This is our best bet. So thank you for the opportunity, Professor Ross. We can talk later, and if it means few of us can come over to Glasgow and spend like a week with you, walk through your system, we will not mind doing that. But Ireland is our best bet for Africa, where they invested in high quality education and in R&D and companies and pharma. Thank you for this opportunity, Prof. We'll be more than happy to come over to see you in Glasgow. Thank you very much.
Right about now. Thank you very much, Dr. Fallah. Thank you, everyone, for listening through. I'm sure our notes are full, and the whole point of this is just not just for us to talk about it, but for us to make use of the information and the skills and even the knowledge that we've gained. I'm sure many of us can identify with some of the challenges that he has explained, because we are from here and we're actually seeing some of these challenges. Thank you so much, sir. We'll be happy to come to you anytime we have questions and comments. And thank you for a wonderful session. A round of applause, everyone.
Thank you so much. It was an honor. Goodbye. Have a great time. Thank you, Amos, for all
Bye.
you do. Bye.